everyone, I'm Chris Hewitt, and welcome to this very, very special gala screening of Welcome to the Punch! Very, very special and explosive time tonight, I can tell you that. A couple of things before we start. Huge thanks, of course, to E1 Momentum, without whom this would not have happened. Stick around after the screening for a Q&A with the director Eran Creevy, also Peter Mullen and Mark Strong. And Ben Pugh, one of the 3 producers in the movie, couldn't be here tonight. He does send us apologies, and he also sends the other 2 producers. Please welcome Brian Kavanagh-Jones and Mr. Rory Aitken.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here tonight. I hope you'll excuse me for making a few thank yous. It's been an incredibly long journey to get here for us, and it's incredible to be here and share tonight with you. So thanks for being here. First of all, I want to thank I'm Global, who sold this film worldwide. They sold it to every country in the world and did an incredible job, and were with us from the beginning. E1 Momentum, who released the film, or are releasing the film in 10 days' time in the UK, Canada and Spain. And again, they were there from the beginning. The team backed us from the start, and we've been on an incredible journey with them. So thanks to everyone within that team that really believed in us. Finally, well, also BFI, the British Film Institute, who backed us and came in and really helped us make the film. Also, Worldview Entertainment. It goes on, it was quite a patchwork of finance to make the film, but and Quickfire Films, who also helped us with the financing of the film. And also Scott Free, who Ridley Scott and Liza Marshall, who came and exec produced the movie, which was a huge honour to work with them, and of course to be backed by Ridley Scott was a huge boost for us, and helped us bring on such incredible cast and crew that helped us deliver this film. So thank you to all of them. The producing team, it's me, Ben and Brian, and Ben and I have worked together every day for the last 8 years, and with Eran, and Ben sadly can't be here tonight. He's given me a message to read out. I think if you can't be here at your own premiere, the only good excuse is that you're shooting another film, which he is, in Jordan. And that starts shooting in about 3 weeks, so unfortunately he couldn't fly back to be here. So I'll read out his message. He said, "Hello everyone, sad not to be there with you all tonight, but I'm away prepping to shoot a film in Jordan. I just wanted to say thank you to the many people that put their passion, intelligence and belief into transforming Iran's script of Welcome to the Punch into the movie you're going to watch tonight. It really is remarkable the number of amazing people that have been part of the journey. It was our genuine fortune to have each and every one of those people commit to the movie and help us bring it all this way to Leicester Square tonight, and to be distributed in every country in the world. We are hugely grateful, so thank you again, enjoy the film and have a great night. I'm going to head off to have an ice-cold Alex in a moment and raise a beer to you all." I may say I did ask him what an ice-cold Alex meant. He replied, "It's a film reference, do you not know that film?" To which I replied, "Shit, no." He replied, "It's quite famous, go for it. It's a guy in Egypt at a bar having a really cold beer." So if someone could tell me what that means afterwards, I'm embarrassed to say. But so from the film lover Ben Pugh to the heathen Rory Aitken, that's the message. Thank you all very much. And so, Brian is the money, so he just said he just wanted to nod and wave. And Brian was a huge part of us putting this together. And but of course, the person that wrote and directed this film, and who it's been an honour to go on this journey with, and be here tonight with, particularly, is Eran Creevy, who I'm introducing to you now.
Hello everyone, thank you very, very much for coming down tonight to this gala screening, which is not a premiere, because the premiere happened last week. It's not a premiere, but it is a premiere, so I don't know what it is. But so thank you very much for coming down here. Some people may wonder why I moved on to make this cops and robbers action thriller after making a socio-realistic drama like Shifty, which is very nuanced and verite style of filmmaking. But I grew up with a massive love of comic books and the films of John Woo, that sort of very, thank you very much, Mum. Very bloodshed era of the late 80s and early 90s. So I kind of made a homage to that Hong Kong action cinema and kind of cops movies of the 70s, like Bullet and The French Connection, and this is the result. It's been an amazing journey. I'm terrible at remembering names, you know what I mean? So that's why I asked Rory to do all of that stuff. But I want to thank my producers, Brian Kavanagh-Jones, Rory Aitken, and the amazing Ben Pugh, who can't be here tonight. I want to thank you, my lovely wife, who is about to come down. She's looking after our little baby daughter at the moment, and it's her first birthday today. So this time last year, yeah, come on, dear. This time last year, I was in a taxi with my wife, and she's. We were like on the way to the hospital. My baby daughter was born, and we were trying to deliver the film at the same time. So I was in the hospital, and I was running off to the mix and doing the mix of the orchestra, then going back to the hospital. So it's been like a bit of an emotional journey to finally get here. And when I sort of presented I gave my daughter her card this morning, I had a bit of a cry, because I was like, oh God, it's been so emotional. Dad said, are you crying because it's her birthday? Yeah, that's why. But listen, I'm going to introduce some of the... My wife's mum, she's here, don't tell her that, yeah, don't tell her that. But look, I'm going to introduce some of the crew. James McAvoy couldn't make it because he was here earlier on, but he had to shoot off because he's in Macbeth at the moment and he's doing a show tonight. So he had to shoot off and do his production. Andrew Rice was in America. But I've got some of the amazing crew here. I'm going to look and I can see them. They've got plenty of some of the best talent in Britain. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Strong, Richie, Peter Mullen, Johnny Harris, Danny Mays, Daniel Muir, Jason Rucker, and Mr. Jason Bennett. It's a great movie and we're very proud of it. And I just want to say quickly, when we were making this film, everyone knows that Ridley Scott was an executive producer in the movie, but there was one name that became synonymous with the visual style and what we were going for, and that was Tony Scott. And sometimes when we were on set, I would be trying to choose a location when we were wrecking the location, and I couldn't choose the right location, and the production designer had worked with Tony Scott, and he'd walk up behind me and he'd say, "Tony would love it here, darling." And I'd go, yeah, he would. And we were always trying to push the boundaries and shoot that much more aspirational style. And sometimes when we were framing up the camera, I'd look at Ed, the cinematographer, and I'd say, "It's not very Tony Scott, is it?" And he'd say, "No, it's not." So let's wrap it. Let's start again. Let's reframe. We've got to try and push this film to kind of feel sexy, like a bigger American movie. And unfortunately, Tony Scott's not with us anymore. But hopefully, he was a rock and roll director, and hopefully some of that rock and roll spirit has bled through into Welcome to the Punch. The king of action cinema may be dead, but his spirit lives on in the next generation of filmmakers like myself. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will enjoy this film. Welcome to the Punch. Thank you.
And now Mr. Peter Mullen, everybody.
No. Somebody asked for my beer there. No. Okay.
You're bringing that for everybody, Peter. So, Eran, let's start with a year ago. Your daughter was born, and you were finishing this film. And has that been a strange year for you now? Because you've been sitting in this movie waiting for it to come out. Has that been a strange experience, just hoping that people will eventually get to see it and connect with it? In this
it's been a weird process. That is the process of filmmaking. Kind of like it goes into a long process. The film is made. We shot it at the end of 2011. We wrapped kind of doing all the post-production in March, and then you kind of wait and you find your slot. And it's weird. You kind of have there's windows booked up, so it feels like you just make your film and it must come out a month after you finish shooting it. That's not the process. Like the weekends are booked up in advance, like years in advance. So if you don't get that window, you have to go. The actually only next window we've got is like beginning of 2013. So like, really, that's like a year away. that's kind of the process of filmmaking. That's kind of strange to a word, but you kind of, you know, we went off and I've been writing other screenplays and working on other stuff, and so yeah, it's nice to be able to sit here and finally get to release it.
Let's talk about these two gentlemen here. How did you come to cast Mark and Peter in these roles?
Just because they're bloody good actors. And they're like, you know, they're kind of the best actors, you know, we've got in this country. And same with James McAvoy, Mark Strong, Peter Mullen, Andrew Riseborough, Danny Mays, kind of, you know, the rest of the crew. And just came, that's kind of how, you know, came about, just new level of quality of actor that I wanted in the role, and we just went for it and asked them if they wanted to be in the film, and luckily they said yes.
And Mark, was the appeal of Jacob as well? He's a complex, haunted character, but at the same time, he is effortlessly cool. Was that an appeal?
Yeah, definitely.
You got a mic?
Yeah.
There we go.
I feel a little bit like Kenny Rogers on this mic.
Yeah, definitely cool as you're talking to your water bottle.
Jacob's cool.
I realised something was wrong. A very cool character, and that was always the brief. Really, we had to kind of create this mythical, iconic guy that James's character would really feel that strongly about. Because otherwise, just in the course of his duty, he runs into criminals all the time. But this guy had to be his nemesis, so it was a great brief to have to fulfill, which was be you know, solid, almost kind of larger than life in a way. That you're just this scary guy in this guy's imagination.
So how do you do that? Do you go to cool camp? Is Eran sort of arbiter of cool behind the monitor, going, that's not cool enough?
You don't say much and you just stare a lot.
I've got this opinion that Mark Strong was never a teenage boy, he was just born Mark Strong. Like, he came out of that like, hi, I'm Mark Strong.
Is this true, Mark?
No.
You have to ask my mum.
Peter, what was the appeal of this one? Because you don't get to play with the guns the way that Mark does or James does. Was that?
You imply that I'm not effortlessly cool.
We said that you're effortlessly cool, but were you slightly disappointed not to get playing with the guns this time around?
We did.
I got my gun sequence.
Yeah.
There's only one. It's only a little gun. I get shot beforehand. I get to put a gun on a granny's head. It's not something that happens every day in your life. Yeah. Pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. I've been told that Johnny's preparation for that scene was slightly different. Is Johnny still here?
He's just slipped out.
How is he?
He's gone to prepare. Johnny famously is a very, very enthusiastic actor when it comes to preparation. He really needs to get there, doesn't he? I mean, everyone has their own particular method. But Johnny is incredibly intense to have around on set. And that scene of all of us in the room was pretty amazing, I have to say. That level of tension stayed that way all day.
So in between times, I mean, honestly, the minute we stopped, I mean, Johnny did this lovely stuff that just before we turned over, and even when the camera was on us and not on Johnny during the grand sequence, and he would look and he'd look at me and I'm like, fuck you, I'm like this. And it was great because I was giving it back, and so was Mark, and so was James, and Johnny was just, yeah, you're going to touch my gran. I'm like, fuck. It was just, and literally the great thing about acting is after we've done all that really wonderfully silly, you literally get up and go, oh, you are so nice. And I watch playback because you died so well. That's the great thing about movies. You can hurt someone and you don't hurt them at all.
Yeah.
But you give yourself big cuddles and kisses.
And it doesn't matter if he touches your arm because the wound is fake.
Of course.
If you have any questions at all for the three gentlemen on these wonderful Westlife stools, then by all means, do put your hands up. Yeah, right over here. We have a roving microphone. Coming around, thank you.
Johnny, stand up. There's Johnny Harris. Yeah, Johnny,
Where is
stand up.
Mr. Johnny Harris. So before we get to your question,
Give me a microphone, cool, John.
Thanks for that. So Johnny, were you out of the room when we were talking about the scene with your gran and the preparation that you went through for that? Okay, all right. They said some horrible things about you, I have to say. But can you talk about your preparation for that? Because I've heard you got quite intense and you were staring at Peter and saying nasty F word. Is that true?
I forgot that. We just do that all the time. That's our idea of fun, you know. You just yeah, it's funny, you know. I've heard, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis has been doing the rounds recently, just saying you have to be so careful of talking about that stuff, because what you do is very silly. You know, it's like, you know, if I'm in the corner doing press-ups, or there's nothing intense about it. It's a silly thing for a guy to do, but what I do for a living is silly. You know, I pretend to be someone else, and so if you get kind of serious about it.
But it must be important for you to get into that mood and that mindset.
Yeah, but it's only very practical. I mean, you know, in that scene there, I think there was a moment where James has got the gun to my head, and you know, he's forcing me to make a phone call. And so if you imagine that, and you take it out of context with all the other action that's gone on, you know, you're kind of calm before the, you know, and so you'd imagine he'd be kind of tense around here, you know, and he's just been shot in the shoulder and all of that, and so you can't really just go action and then, you know, you can do a couple of press-ups and things come up. It doesn't take much for me to get out of breath now. You know, so it's very practical. That's one example of, you know, so you have to be careful. I think people lump it with the method or something like that, and you can sound like you take yourself a bit too seriously, you know. But yeah, whatever it takes is...
Excellent. Good. Now we have a question for this very patient gentleman over here. Thank you.
Ryan, I just wanted to ask you, there's a bit of a trend at the moment for quite sort of commercial British action films. I think sort of things like Blitz and Sweeney and now this, which is really cool. Was that something that you were conscious of when you were making the film, or were you sort of outside?
I'd just grown up on it because, you know, first film was socio-realist drama, and I just grew up in a love of Hong Kong action cinema, loving such films as, you know, by John Woo, Hard-Boiled and The Killer, and just very kind of, I think there's a next generation of filmmakers that didn't grow up on Ken Loach and Mike Leigh. We grew up on the diet of Die Hard and Predator and Lethal Weapon and Return of the Jedi and Superman 2, do you know what I mean? And they're the sort of diet of movies that I watched growing up as a kid, and sitting in my stepfather's video store in the basement and watching those sort of movies. And I think, you know, that's why you get filmmakers such as Paul Andrew Williams that make a film like London to Brighton, and then their follow-up film is something like The Cottage, which is kind of balls-to-the-wall horror movie, which is clearly inspired by something like maybe The Evil Dead 2. So I think, and such as Gareth Evans, who just made The Raid, he's a Welsh guy who's made kind of, you know, a Malaysian sort of balls-to-the-wall action movie. But I think there's just a generation of filmmakers that grew up on the cinema, people like Tony Scott and Ridley Scott, and I think you're seeing it seep through into the kind of popular culture of Britain at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions for anyone? Yes, you're in the second row. There's a microphone coming around, so we can... There you go.
During the morgue scene...
Patience! During the morgue scene, did you originally have a load of dialogue written for that? Because it's actually, you watch it again and you look at it and there's not actually a hell of a lot said. It works incredibly well, it's incredibly powerful, but originally was there a lot of dialogue written for it, or did you kind of par it back, or, I mean, how did that scene work?
To be honest, I can't remember. But I always think that scenes like that work better probably with less dialogue. I mean, you're always trying to, you know, do things without having to kind of explain things all the time.
The Thames Beach scene where James and Mark are on the beach after the morgue scene, and James is standing looking out across the water and Mark's character walks down, and we'd written lots of dialogue for that sequence, and we'd even rehearsed it with a big argument and a big fight sequence. Not fight sequence, but they're kind of going at each other and blaming each other for what happened. And I'd recently been in a situation with my own mother, who is here today, sitting there, who kind of got very close to death and almost died, and thankfully she's here today and she kind of made it through that process. But afterwards, me and my father, we were catatonic, we couldn't speak to each other after we'd been through that process. So we were kind of on the set, and I'd written this screen and it was full of dialogue, and then I went up to Mark and James and I think we've got this wrong. You know, when someone dies or that's happened to you, you're catatonic, you can't speak, and I think we should try and do it as a minimum amount of dialogue as possible. So that morning I wrote that scene on the Thames Beach and handed it to the guys and said, strip out all that dialogue and just make it very minimal and simple between the two of you. And so that sequence did have kind of, a bit more dialogue.
Was that the idea from the off, to give Max a loss in a way that mirrored Jacob's with the death?
Yeah, just to kind of try to, there was a lot more backstory that you don't see in the film that we shot and kind of didn't end up making it in the final cut, and there was a lot more backstory to Mark's character, and he had these consistent anxiety attacks throughout the entire movie. He had these heavy panic attacks since his wife had died, and you had this backstory that his wife, they lived in Iceland, she'd gone out walking in the mountains and she was found dead at the bottom of a ravine, and he didn't know whether she'd committed suicide or fallen. and that had pushed his relationship with his son, like their relationship even further apart. And so this divide had happened between him and his son. So when his son got injured, they hadn't talked to each other for quite a few months. And that was all in the film. We shot kind of a monologue and these different things.
Great backstory that got cut out.
But yeah, but I sort of think that we had to service the story. It was a cops and robbers movie that needed to move with a certain pace. And we watched the film, and I think that you felt that Mark's character was three-dimensional enough because he knew all that as an actor, and he kind of been fed this backstory and history. So it just informed his process and how he came across. So you didn't feel like it was just another standard villain. You felt somebody who was three-dimensional.
And did you have the similar backstory for your character, Peter, or for yours, Johnny?
I think I gave them all biographies. I sent them, I emailed them all about who their lives were and who Johnny was and what he'd been in the army and what he's. I sent you all this different process, didn't you, and what your rank was and what happened and how he'd kind of been dismissed from the army and why he wanted to do what he was doing. So to try and give everyone their motivation and how Peter's character met Mark when they were young kids and what they'd been through and how they'd evolved into this. So everyone had a kind of a 3 or 4 page history to read, and so they all knew who their characters were. It wasn't just like, oh, turn up to set.
You didn't have to read it.
No, Peter probably didn't read it, but I gave him the option to read it if he so wished. Pete, you know that bit in your history, yeah? Yeah. I did email it to you.
Is there someone? I don't even think, honestly, no offence, I never knew that. I never knew as a backstory.
I write all this stuff for the actors and I email it to them and they never read it.
Well, you're going to cut it out anyway. So
you know what? But it's,
don't blame it on us. You got a whole backstory for him. You shot the backstory, then you cut it.
You're dead to me, Mullen.
Peter, what sort of backstory did you have in your head then for Roy, having not read Eran's backstory?
Well, it's just a process. What process do you go through as an actor in general?
I can't talk about that. It's really, that's my own personal journey.
Any other questions? Yes, went down in the front row. I'll bring you the microphone. There you go.
Michael Mann, Heat, quite a blueprint for your, or a good source of inspiration, especially for Mark's character, how maybe Robert De Niro will develop into Mark and vice versa, I would have thought.
Yeah, when I first met Eran, I said, you know, what are we doing? And those were films. There was a number of films. He said, go and have a look at these. And one was Heat. The other one was the Infernal Affairs, the Hong Kong movie, and anything with Gene Hackman in it, basically. But there was a kind of template of film that we wanted to try, that he wanted to try and emulate, and Heat was certainly one of them.
Johnny and Peter, did you get a pack of films to watch to prepare for this as well?
No, not for this one, I didn't. No, I was too busy reading all this stuff.
yeah, Johnny, Peter, Johnny was too busy reading all the 5 pages of biography. Don't worry about it.
Any other questions at all? We're all going to get in trouble for this. Right over here in the front row, thank you. Right down the stairs.
It kind of leads on from what was being said before, because you were saying that some of the scenes were very kind of dialogue-light and it's kind of very stylised, and yet you also wanted it to be a cops and robbers film. And I was wondering how hard it was to get that kind of mix, because obviously it looks like a very stylish film. And yeah, how did you get that mix kind of right?
I think it's a hard balance, because on Shifty it was just about being with the actors and kind of the nuance of performance and trying to make them get that across on screen and just like a handheld 16mm camera. But with this, it was always trying to balance the action and try and aspire to those sort of Hong Kong action movies and try and balance their performance and make sure the story was staying character-driven and trying to, you know, you've got an amazing cast like this, but there's so many actors and sometimes they've got, as you said, like when you talked about Danny Boyle earlier on, there's so many actors asking you questions, but I'm also trying to concentrate on making it look aspirational and a bigger film than what it was. And yeah, this film cost $5 million and we were trying to make it look like it cost $20 million basically, so it's kind of always trying to juggle with that and push the boundaries. So it was harder to make than Shifty because I was always trying to focus on other stuff, and hopefully we managed to make that balance and concentrate on the action and the kind of visual style of the movie. So it feels like something that people want to go and see on a Friday night, or you know, when the movie comes out, hopefully.
Anyone else got a question? There's over here in the check shirt, thank you.
Hi, the ending is quite ambiguous. Is that so you left it open in case it's popular enough for a sequel?
Yeah, I always do. Like Shifty had a very ambiguous ending, and with this, I had an ambiguous ending because I wanted to. I don't like to I like to make up your own conclusions on what happens to Max, whether he goes to prison or whether he takes the rap for Sarah's murder. But then Ian Canning, actually, a producer, watched it and said, "You should make a sequel to this." And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be quite good." I thought, "Yeah, we'll call it the Hong Kong sector." And Jacob's escaped and he's now living in Hong Kong. Max is in prison, and then Max is approached by the British government to go and track down Jacob Mark in Hong Kong. And he goes to Hong Kong, but he slips out of the kind of being watched by the British government. And he teams up with Max, and they do a heist in Hong Kong, and they go against the British government. So no, I haven't really thought about it at all.
Marky looked quite mystified by that. Is this the first you've heard?
That's really interesting to hear. Sounds great.
I mean, fancy a trip to Hong Kong, gents? In your future at some point?
I was trying to figure out how to bring Roy into it as well, because he's married, he's got the car. So I was like, what would Roy be doing? He'd have to lie.
I'd be paraplegic. Just put me in a wheelchair, whatever. This came true.
He's on holiday, Mark happens to be there as well at the same time.
And that'd be called Welcome to the Punch, the Hong Kong sector.
Just call it the Hong Kong sector.
Okay.
Not Welcome to the Punch 2, WTTV 2, Hong Kong sector. That's the longest title ever.
I like it. Any more questions at all? Yes, right up here. Thank you very much. In the blue shirt.
What was it like filming that bike chase? Did you have to get the Isle of Dogs closed down for that?
Where's Rory Aitken? You come here. Come here, producer Rory Aitken.
Because he's the man who made that bike chase happen, because he closed down Canary Wharf.
Yeah, we called Canary Wharf and we said, could we make a film there and shut it down for 2 days? And they said no. And they said we get 5 requests like this every week, and we say no to all of them. So we thought about that and thought, what else are we going to do?
So Rory slept with all of them, basically.
Ran our way up the building, and they said they don't like crime being portrayed in Canary Wharf. So I said, well, I didn't say anything actually. I was going to say quite a lot of things, but I said no on the streets, no crime on the streets of Canary Wharf. And so actually, yeah, we went back and we wouldn't let them go. And basically, I think that they get a lot of requests for kind of sort of gangster films, and they kind of don't like that reputation of London, and particularly Canary Wharf. And so, you know, Iran's vision for this film was about actually making a really kind of aspirational thriller. And we talked about Heat a lot. But we went and sold them on that, and actually they went for that. And so did quite a few people involved in the film. And the first building that you saw was in the city. They also said no to us. And but the same thing, we went back and we said, you know, what we're actually trying to do is trying to make London look slick and part of the 21st century, and not just kind of, you know, gangsters and geezers. And they went with it and eventually let us shoot there. And so we had a Saturday night and a Sunday night in Canary Wharf. And we finished at 5 AM as people were just arriving for work. So it was incredibly tight to shoot there. And, you know, it's amazing because it's an island and they just shut it down. And, you know, no cars came in or out. And we were able to just, you know, use it almost as a set, which was amazing. So, yeah, they were incredibly cooperative. And we were very lucky, basically.
Thank you. Slowly but surely we're getting the entire cast and crew down here on stage. Anyone else got a question for the LD5 gentlemen? Yeah, right in the very, very middle here. Keep your hand up so the person with the microphone can see you. Thank you very much. That's another blue shirt.
Yeah, hi. Great film, by the way.
Thank you very much. What have we got in the audience? Whoever who's here? Jason here as well. Jason, come here. Jason, come. I just want you to be here with me. I just want you to come and give me a cuddle. Come on, Jason, come down. Let's see it. Everyone loves Jason.
I've been out of focus behind all of them.
Ruth Sheen as well.
Ruth Sheen.
Ruth. There's Ruth Sheen. Where's Jason Mazza? he still here?
Well, that poor man was asking a question.
Oh no, it's okay. I can wait.
A question from
Anyone else from the cast want to come down? Just wondering, when you were writing the screenplay and you were fleshing out these characters on paper, did you ever have do you have an idea as to who you want to cast in beforehand? I mean, like, did you, for instance, think to yourself while writing?
Yeah, when you're writing the screenplay, you kind of have ideas that you want someone like James McAvoy to play Max, or you want someone like Mark Strong to play Jacob Sternwood, and you have that kind of in mind. And then, thankfully, to get an executive producer like Ridley Scott on board, who comes and kind of adds a sense of cachet to the project, and that really helps us get those sort of actors because they kind of know that there's someone like that that's behind mentoring the project, and there's an executive producer. So yeah, we kind of always you have those sort of people in mind, and in the hope that you can get them.
And then he sent me the script, and it said 77-year-old. And he thought of me, which I said yes immediately.
But was it also important to you, because you got a lot of people from Shifty in this film as well, including Mr. Fleming here, was it important to you to bring people back? And
Yeah, well, Fleming was kind of, at a time, had twins with his beautiful wife Ellie, and he was like, mate, I've just had twins and I can't really get involved in the film the way I wanted to do it. And I was like, well, do you want to kind of come, we've got this sequence. And he was like, yeah, I can come on set for 2 days. And he came down and thankfully did that sequence for us and didn't tell his agent about it.
Who's here tonight?
Who didn't know he was in it?
Because they, agents and all those people that, that think they can create and help your careers, they always think it's a really silly idea. They don't understand about loyalty and about working as a family, as filmmakers. And so as soon as you go, it's one line and it's for Rani, it's like, I think it's a ridiculous idea.